joining us.
What a shame.
We're always happy to have you on anyway.
The Nation article is really extraordinary. Even those on the left are beginning to realize that what we have here is hysterical red baiting,
yes,
fear mongering, Russophobia. It's interesting the way our politics have reversed themselves in the 50s and before that in the 30s. It was those on the right who were accused of being too sensitive to and too anti-communist. Now, that seems to be transferred to the left. This lawsuit, which the article is specifically about, in which I am being sued along with President Trump by the Project for Democracy, which is a Barack Obama-blessed front group, recently brought in an amicus brief signed by the whole front line of the Obama NSA, John Brennan, James Clapper, and the rest of the shaved head crowd. Has nothing to do with me. They just repeat their same bogus claim that the Russians are under every rock, behind every tree. Oh, they've interfered with the election. They offer no proof. And they offer nothing that ties me to any of this, if it even really happened. So now it's extraordinary. Even publications like The Nation are catching on to the fact that this is an attempt to stigmatize all dissent.
And in this article, Roger, what they point out is that in this brief that's there, they say the complaint that was filed says that it does not contain any hard evidence that the campaign did anything. So the Nation is pointing this out. I mean, certainly they don't agree with us on the policies. They don't agree with Trump, but they don't want to see political dissent and opinion criminalized like this. And they're very concerned, as you point out, the front line of the National Intelligence Services, Brennan, Clapper, and others, being politicized like this. This concerns the nation, and they should be concerned. I've been saying that people on the left and the right, regardless of what you think about this, the thing that you should fear is this politicization of the intelligence services. You know, when Megyn Kelly was here, she said, oh, did you see my interview with Putin? I said, I'm not worried about Putin. I'm worried about the CIA and the NSA being politicized in this country. I see that as the greatest danger. And now the nation is saying the same thing as well.
And they're responsible, David, for the erosion of our civil liberties. I mean, we know from the FISA court disclosures in November that the Barack Obama NSA was surveilling as many as 30,000 Americans, overwhelmingly Republicans, for what was clearly just an act of political espionage, using the state spying apparatus financed by the taxpayers to spy on the Republican presidential candidate and his campaign. 10 times worse than anything Richard Nixon was ever accused of in Watergate.
Well, you know, it was Michael Hayden who bragged to students at Washington and Lee, and I bring this up frequently. He said to them, he said, we don't look at bad people. We're interested in interesting people. And this is exactly what we have seen. They're interested in people like President Trump. They're going to be the first line of what what William Binney said when I interviewed him. He said, they have become the Praetorian Guard. They're going to pick who the leaders of this country are because they're the real leaders eventually. The people who are set up to protect the emperor then start picking the emperor.
No, it is a out of control rogue elite that are seeking to subvert our democracy. And it's funny, the left went so crazy about Watergate. No person is above the law, they told us. Yet it appears to me like Obama and his NSA have violated the law, have violated my civil liberties, the civil liberties of Donald Trump and his family and his associates. And at this point, it appears they will pay no penalty for it whatsoever.
Yeah, that's interesting. And the other thing that the Nation pointed out in this, they said, you know, this lawsuit, this amicus brief that was filed there, says that Russia deploys, quote, active measures that seek to undermine confidence in democratic leaders and institutions to sow discord within the United States. What is it that the Russiagate investigation done by these same people is doing? It's doing all of that. It's active measures. It undermines our democratic leaders, our institutions, and it's sowing discord. That's precisely what they are doing.
Notice in the same article, it cites the amicus brief as saying that the Russians work through political operatives, and it goes on to say academics and so on. That's an implication. It's a bogus implication. There is no evidence whatsoever, nor did I ever have any contact with any Russians or individuals working on behalf of Russia during or before the presidential campaign. The entire Russian collusion is a delusion, yet Congressman Adam Schiff and Congressman Nancy Pelosi, who have already spent millions and come up empty-handed, want to continue the probe and spend millions of more of the taxpayers' money in what is clearly just a naked partisan attempt to smear the president.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. Now, the question is, you said they may not pay any penalty for this, but I think there may be a question as to whether or not there is a counter coup that is beginning now. We had a week ago, I was just talking to Dr. Jerome Corsi about what had happened a week ago. We had Attorney General Jeff Sessions say, hey, we're going to start interviewing people from the FBI about the Uranium One deal. On the same day, we had an executive order quietly signed by President Trump, not much attention, but what it looks like is a RICO type of statute to come after the assets of anybody who is involved in corruption. And of course, when we're looking at corruption, we're talking about Uranium One. And specifically listed, Roger, 13 individuals, 6 of whom have very close ties, as I talked about yesterday, to the Clintons. Is this a move, you think, like we've had former prosecutors invoke the RICO statute against organized crime families? Is this a move to invoke something like that against the organized crime family of the Clintons?
Well, David, from your mouth to God's ear, this certainly does seem to be tailored specifically for the Uranium One scandal, where we know that Mr. Mueller, Mr. Comey, both as FBI directors, Mr. McCabe as the assistant director of the FBI, and U.S. Attorney then Rod Rosenstein were up to their hips and had full knowledge of both bribery and other improper and illegal activities surrounding the sale of 20% of Americans' enriched uranium supply to a company controlled by the Kremlin. I think Alex Jones has hit this better than anybody I know. Think of the chutzpah involved. They're accusing Donald Trump of being in bed with the Russians when we now learn it was the front line of the Clinton and the Obama administration who were in fact in bed with the Russians. They're the ones who were colluding with the Russians against America's interests. So
typical liberal projection, isn't it?
Yeah,
projecting their crimes onto other people, hoping that they can hang other people for what they have done. And of course, as we pointed out before, the same central characters involved in that Uranium One are leading this investigation. Can you stay with us one more segment, Roger?
Yes, absolutely. I want to do.
All right, we'll be right back with Roger Stone. I'm David Knight. Welcome back. I'm David Knight, and we're talking to Roger Stone. In the last segment, we were talking about the Russian gate insanity devolving into the kind of witch hunt that is looking. The Senate Intelligence Committee is actually asking anybody, have you ever talked to any Russian citizens or even people of Russian descent? And many people on the left are saying, are you serious? Are you serious? You're talking about 1% of the population has Russian descent. My wife has, she's half Italian, and on the other side, it's Polish and Prussian. She says, is that going to get me in here in the Russian investigation? I mean, this is the desperation and the insanity of people. But we were just pointing out, Roger, that this may be turning now at this point as Jeff Sessions awakes, or maybe this was something that they've been laying out for quite some time. What do you think is going to happen next?
Well, David, I myself have just received a letter from the Senate Judiciary Committee asking me to answer a number of questions. And the incredible thing is that if anyone on the Senate Judiciary Committee staff or any member of the Senate who's on the committee had read my under oath statement before the House Intelligence Committee, I've already answered every single one of their questions in detail. So they're falling over themselves here in an effort to prop up what is clearly a flagging investigation. But I have come to the conclusion, David, that the executive order that you just cited may be the precursor to a move that we at InfoWars have been advocating now for several weeks, and that is that the President of the United States completely within his authority, order Jeff Sessions to appoint a special prosecutor, a special counsel, in the matter of Uranium One. That would put Mr. Mueller, Mr. Comey, Mr. McCabe, and Mr. Rosenstein under immediate federal investigation. I'm going to amend that view now. I've thought about it after I did an interview with C-SPAN, which I taped last Friday and which aired this past Sunday. I think the president should fire Rod Rosenstein right now. And the reason for that firing is he has violated the ethical rules of the Justice Department because he appointed a special prosecutor, in this case, Mr. Mueller, with whom he has a close personal relationship. Yes. The rules say that even the appearance of a conflict is grounds for dismissal. That way, if the president orders Sessions to appoint a special prosecutor, and Sessions demurs, which seems to be possible, the decision would then not be bucked to Rosenstein, but would go on instead to the Solicitor General, who I believe would carry out the president's orders. Rosenstein is a menace. Rosenstein is an asp in the bosom. It's time for President Trump to give this guy his walking papers.
Yeah, he was involved with Comey for a long time and with Mueller going back as part of this uranium stuff, Uranium One stuff. These guys have all been working together for quite some time. And it was just this last week that Alan Dershowitz said the same thing you just said, Roger, about even the appearance of a conflict of interest when he was talking about Andrew McCabe and saying he should never have been involved in investigating Hillary Clinton because of his deep ties and his wife's ties to McAuliffe, to the DNC and so forth as she was running for office. He should have never let himself get in that position. But of course, these guys like McCabe, like Rosenstein, they don't play by the same rules that Jeff Sessions does. He was overly cautious, many people believe, because all he had done as a senator was to talk to a Russian ambassador, which senators do all the time. But because that could be construed by some people as a conflict of interest, he removed himself out. And yet these people like Rod Rosenstein, as you just pointed out, and Andrew McCabe, who have, I would say, not just the appearance of a conflict of interest, but real, serious conflict of interest, have continued to keep themselves at the center of these investigations. Stay with us. We got one more segment with Roger Stone. We'll be right back. I'm David Knight. Welcome back. I'm David Knight, and we're talking to Roger Stone at the top of the hour. Many of you have a news break at the top of the hour, radio stations. We had a bit of new news from Roger Stone saying that he has now gotten another letter from the Senate Judiciary Committee to respond to them and asking the same types of questions that had been asked of him in a closed session. Roger, is this something that they want a written response to, or do they want you to come talk to them? Is it going to be a public questioning that is coming up with the Senate Judiciary Committee?
Well, they have given me a deadline to respond to their questions in writing, which we are working with my lawyers to do. It's not very difficult because I've answered all these questions previously. It's very clear to me that between the House and the Senate, the left hand does not know what the far left hand is doing. And there's enormous duplication here, but I'm going to respond forthrightly and completely to all their questions yet again, because I frankly like to clear the air on this whole Russian matter. Going back to our previous conversation, it is absolutely clear to me that the president should terminate Rosenstein immediately, and then order Sessions to appoint a special prosecutor. Now, the president has said a number of things in tweets and in interviews which lead me to believe that his lawyers have told him that it is somehow improper for him to issue orders to the Justice Department. David, that's not true. The Justice Department is an expansion of the executive branch, and the president has full authority to call Jeff Sessions and give him a direct order. The left has been so much more effective at weaponizing the judiciary against conservatives. Republicans, I think, respect the Constitution and they respect the division of powers, and we have not used our Justice Departments during Republican presidencies as as a vendetta a vehicle, as a political vanguard. Perhaps it's time for us to finally do so.
Well, as you pointed out, the Justice Department is under the executive branch, and the FBI is under the Justice Department. That's why President Trump could fire Comey, and that's why people like Alan Dershowitz have said there is nothing improper about him doing that. That's not a criminal act that the left is up in arms so much about. So, yes, he could get rid of Rod Rosenstein as well. How do you see this? Of course, you have the interview that was on C-SPAN, and we have that on Infowars.com. Excellent interview. Great job that you did there on that broadcast, Roger. And if people want to see that, they can see that at Infowars.com. But as we move forward with this, and as we see the many things that are coming up, as you pointed out, I think certainly, yes, Rosenstein should be removed. But I think that Jeff Sessions truly has awakened. Because not only did we get the announcement that they're going to be investigating deposing FBI agents about Uranium One, we had the executive order that would basically give RICO power to them to take away the assets of people who were involved in corruption. But then we also see that, and this is kind of an interesting development that I just noticed today, Roger, and that is the Awans, Imran, Awan, and others. It appears that maybe something is brewing with the Justice Department, because they had a January the 8th court date. Luke Rosiak, who's been broke all these stories about about Imran Awan and the family and their relationship with Debbie Wasserman Schultz. He points out, hey, they had a January 8th court date. That has disappeared, and I can't find it anywhere. And the wife who had escaped from the country has now agreed to return and to testify. Are they turning these people, you think?
Well, we now know extraordinarily, David, that House Speaker Paul Ryan knew as early as September of 2016 what the Awans were up to and what they had done. Mm-hmm. He knew that they, at that point, had stolen as much as $16 million in cash through bogus online financial transactions regarding the House computer system. Yet he did not go public or allow the House to go public with that information until after the election. I'm really scratching my head about that. Luke Rosiak has done extraordinarily effective reporting on this entire issue. And it appears to me that the Awan brothers penetrating the House computer system really is an act of a breach of national security, I guess is the best way to put it. This may be a much, much bigger scandal than the mainstream media has acknowledged.
They're corrupt in so many different ways. They're paid extraordinarily high salaries by Debbie Wasserman Schultz, even though they had no IT credentials. So there obviously is something going on, just besides the fact that they are petty criminals. There was something going on with Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
Well, more troubling is the fact that after Wasserman Schultz was formally informed by the Capitol Hill Police that the Awan brothers were under investigation, she changed their status in the House computer system from consultant to staffer to allow their uninterrupted access to the House computer system. Yeah. That means that, in my view, she becomes an accessory in their crimes, an accessory in their theft of both data and money. Yet here in Fort Lauderdale, this story has yet to appear on page 1 of the Fort Lauderdale Sun-Sentinel, the dominant newspaper in Deborah Wasserman Schultz's district.
Wow. And of course, we have seen the clips where she was threatening the Capitol Hill police, saying, get me back my laptop, because they had confiscated some stolen disk drives and other things from the Awan brothers. And she was very concerned about what was on there and threatening the Capitol Hill police chief with consequence. There will be consequences for you. They got that on tape. I mean, she is very worried about what they're going to find out there. But we may have not only the disk drives singing, but we may have the Awan family singing some stories about Debbie Wasserman Schultz, whether it's picked up in her local district's newspaper or not.
She reminds me of every man's first wife. I mean, in all honesty, I don't know how you could wait.
Not my first wife. I don't know.
Well,
My first wife's great.
I was joking, of course. But,
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
This woman is a terror. She is arrogant. She's entitled. She has kind of the same attitude as Sheila Jackson, the congresswoman we talked about tonight on the War Room, who pitched a fit on an airline because she feels entitled to be treated differently than the rest of the American citizens. No, I think there are serious crimes here. Again, though, why Jeff Sessions' Justice Department has not opened an investigation into Wasserman Schultz, why she hasn't been charged as an accessory in the crimes of the Awan brothers, when she very clearly continued their access to the House computer system after she knew they were under investigation. I think that makes her a conspirator.
Yes, and again, as you pointed out with the parallels to the Queen of Sheila Jackson Lee, telling everybody, I am a queen, from the very beginning of this. I mean, the arrogance of these people is exceeded only by their corruption, isn't it, Roger? It's just absolutely amazing what we're seeing from these people in power for a very long time.
No, we see John Conyers leaving the House, and then he hands the seat over to his son, so that the pattern of corruption and arrogance can continue. David, it's an outrage. But we continue to denounce it here at InfoWars.
That's right. Well, at least we're going to get rid of Al Franken. He may not be shutting up. He said he still has his voice, but he's lost his seat.
Well, his biggest problem, of course, is that he's a comedian who was never funny. Never funny.
That's right.
He's going to do a living now because he can't make people laugh.
That's right. Yeah, that joke that he did with the bad joke that he did with the photograph, that has come back to haunt him as well. But it'll be good riddance for him. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens. And if we had any more time, we're out of time right now, but I'd talk to you about your comments. We've talked about that in the past, and you talk about it a good deal on the C-SPAN interview about the opposition within President Trump's cabinet. It's a broad-based opposition, but he has withstood this throughout the year. And I think we're going to see a counterstrike. It looks like everything is lined up for that. Thank you so much for joining us.
We will make America great again.